I'm your host and executive producer, Eli Thompson. Welcome everyone to Unleash Your Beauty, Discover Your Power Within. And today's guest is Dr. Renee Moudray from Transcending Heart. And Dr. Moudray, I'd like you to say hello to our great and wonderful audience.
Hello, everyone. How are you? It's so nice to be here.
This is a wonderful woman that I met, just a few months ago, actually. Well, it's been more than a few months ago now, because that was back in, I think,
October. September. Yeah.
And she's made quite a difference in my life. It impacted me in quite a great way. I appreciate her so much. She's an author, a speaker, a psychologist. And if you will introduce what you do to our audience.
Absolutely. Well, as you said, I am an associate professor of educational psychology at a university here in Ohio. I am the divine mother of two beautiful souls and the owner and founder of Transcending Heart Life Coaching. And now I can put with all that description, the author of my very first novel, The Unbecoming. And I am just about halfway through my second novel, which will be coming out in May. Which is called In the Knowing. But now I can say I'm finally an author, which is fantastic. So yeah, and just overall advocate and influencer in the field of social and emotional development.
And you do an excellent job at that. And
Thank you.
One of the things that one of the areas in which you have specialized is with teens, right?
Yeah, absolutely. My whole training has always been with adolescent young adults. I was a teacher first, and then, worked in the area of educational psychology, training school personnel, things like that, and helping children, not only in special ed, but just regular developing children who somehow, were struggling with their own social and emotional awareness, or their own social and emotional health and development, and really helping teachers, parents, counselors, psychologists really learn how to work with these individuals. And then I really kind of missed working with the kids and kind of went back to that for a little bit. And now as a mom, I kind of get to do it every day. But absolutely, that was how I started out.
Awesome. So what made you go into this field?
Well, it's always interesting as I reflect back, and it's not a pretty story. You think about there's many people who, find their purpose in life through this joy and this blissful element of what they love and what they're good at. Oh no, mine came through trauma, heartache, pain, a loss, just anxiety, panic, everything you can imagine on the negative side of emotional development. That's where Renee was. And I got to a space in time, I was about 19 years old. I was studying to be a teacher. And I was so frustrated with the level of help that I was getting. And it wasn't that people didn't care about me. It wasn't that people weren't able to help me. I had really great school counselors and therapists and things like that to help me with my panic disorder and my anxiety disorder from when I was a really young child. But I didn't feel like I was getting the knowledge in which to do something more powerful in my life. I was learning how to breathe. I was learning how to relax. I was learning how to change my thoughts, but nothing was transforming the energy. Nothing was, everything was just replacing the energy. Change this thought to this thought, this behavior to this behavior. And it worked in some ways, but I still felt like I wasn't empowered to move beyond that fear, that anxiety. And so I decided I was going into school to be the one, if anything, who was going to kind of just break through all these negative patterns in my own life to try to figure out how to help those who were going to come behind me with the same problem. So it really came through trying to save myself, and then the dream and goal to really help other people not have to face, especially kids, not have to face the fears and the demons that I had to face from the age of 3 until about 33. So, yeah.
In learning how to, quote unquote, save yourself, did you have to learn or dig really deep and seek help for yourself?
Yeah. It's hard because it's almost you have to get to a space of acceptance, right, of your imperfections.
Mm-hmm.
And what teenager is able to do that, really? I mean, not many, nor are we really supposed to be able to do that at that age. We're supposed to be fixated on self. Our brain is, that last part, that frontal lobe, that core of the brain in the front, doesn't grow until we're older, right? Our late teens and early 20s at times for many. And there's a reason for that, so that we stay in our survival mode of learning how to make sure we continue to exist on this planet. And we are supposed to be focused on us. But we don't get to see our imperfections in a glorious way, in a lovely way, right? We see them as scary thoughts, as scary things, like, why am I different? Oh, I'm a problem, right? There's something that isn't quite right with me. And now I have the chance, right, to have a daughter who gets to use vocabulary like, I'm perfectly imperfect. Mm-hmm. I'm weird. So are you. Tell me about your weirdness. I love this. I love this 9-year-old, almost 10 tween, right, who goes out and says, all my friends are weird. She's weird because of this, and he's weird because of this. And we're all kind of weird and quirky. And I was like, right on, girl, right on. So yeah, it really was, disheartening at first, because it was an unraveling of sorts, right? I mean, really heightened anxiety, heightened trauma, one bad relationship after the next. I lost my teaching job. I actually got to resign from it, thankfully. But if I hadn't, they probably would have fired me in my 20s because of my anxiety. And I couldn't talk to anybody. I couldn't get it out there into the world and help people with it. So yeah, it was really kind of a coming to a sense of knowing through crashing and burning, in a way.
And that's what most of us have to do, though, unfortunately. But I think, well, not that I think, but I know, because of people such as yourself. Yeah. And I'm grateful that I am the way that I am because of my dad. I really am. Because he had an understanding, and he would explain things to me. And I love that about him, because he would sit and talk with me. Mm. And I didn't feel so weird at that point, that I had someone that I could talk to about different things. Yeah. And that's how I try to be with young people too, because they need to know that they're really not weird. They're just going through a phase in their lives of getting to know and experience different things. And it's okay, because we all do that. But a lot of times as adults, we have a tendency to, quote unquote, forget. Mm-hmm. And right. I call it amnesia. It's called convenient amnesia.
Isn't it interesting how that happens? I'm really trying to be cautious about that as a mother, that I don't forget, because I like, my daughter right now is trying to learn how to put in contact lenses, of all things. And it's really frustrating, and she just can't get it, right? And she's starting to feel really bad about the fact that she can't do something as simple as contact lenses. But I didn't put contact lenses in until I was 30. So I'm just thinking to myself, here's this 9-year-old trying to do something I didn't even do for like 2 more decades. So I'm just going to shut up and let her be. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and this one thing that I try to commend my daughter, my children for, because they're doing, or they have done things that I didn't do until I was like 40, 50 years old. Exactly. And I said, you have surpassed what I have achieved at such a young age, and I'm so thankful. And I really do. Yeah, and they need to know that.
They do.
They really do.
I tell my daughter all the time. My son is marvelous as well, but I tell my daughter, I said, you are far greater, far more of a beautiful divine soul than I ever was at half the age.
Yes.
I marvel in that. And I just watch her. Today she was marching through the house, and she looked like a mother, the way she was just marching with her energy and, just taking command of that kitchen sink and doing the things that she does. And I just look and go, God, I was hiding at 9. I was afraid of the world, and here she is. Yeah, I love
we lived in a world in which we felt like we had to hide.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword in a way. So, but I'm so thankful we're living in the world we live in today.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And as an author, you have been able to share much more of you, because you've been able to put those things into words, such beautiful words, and help us to live through a fantasy. Well, it's almost not like a fantasy for some of us, because
it's reality for some, right? Yeah.
Because I was able to reflect a lot of my life when I was reading your book. Unbecoming, A Journey Within.
Yeah.
So, the main character's name is Liv. And I love that because Liv, she needed to live.
Yeah.
And would you tell us a little bit about that book?
Oh, yeah. I will say Liv is my daughter actually in real life. She was my inspiration for the character, even though the character really is me, right, in the story. The name Renee didn't sound very good in a book, right? So Liv was just such a powerful force, and she is. And basically, where I was trying to write this book about 2 years ago, honestly, it was called A Journey Within. That was the book. And it was going to be a self-help, motivational, kind of traditional book that you'd go out in Barnes and Noble and buy if you wanted to learn something about self-help, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I knew everybody expected that out of me as a psychologist, as a professor, as an academician. I didn't want to do it. I've published enough. I'm tenured at this point. I kind of wanted to do what I wanted to do. And I said, what do I need right now as I'm moving into this next phase of my life, right? I'm done with having children. I'm moving into this more of a crone state in a way of giving back now and being the wise older woman, those kinds of things, and wanting to really feel a great sense of purpose from doing that. And I always grew up loving science fiction and fantasy. And I said, wouldn't it be fun to write like 3 mini books that all culminate in a great story of, fear of pain, and suffering into transcendence and knowing into having to face the ultimate truths of life and the ascension, right, and nirvana, whatever one might call it at the end. And so I decided to go that route and basically write about my journey in the first book, The Unbecoming, was how did I get to let go, surrender, release all of those things that were causing the greatest essence of pain and suffering in my own life. Because I got to be 40, had 2 children at this point, realized that I was still trying to accumulate, become, do more, have more, somehow do something else. And it felt like the energy was just getting trapped. I was more stagnant than I had ever been before in my life. And I came across a beautiful soul in my life who said to me, it's now time to let go. It's time to sort of, shed these layers of things that you thought you were. And I thought, wow, how powerful is that, right? And my therapy was no longer how to change things or become anything else, because I was already quite enough, right? I was too much at this point in my life, which is why I was struggling. And learn how to really let go, surrender, release, unbecome in a way, and get down to the core beauty of who I really was. Because I don't think I was even me. I was living out my mom's dreams. I was living out my father's fears. I was living out society's expectations of a professor and a mother. I was everything. And when I got down to the core and said, who are you? My nickname was Nene as a kid. I was like, Nene, who are you? I just kind of I couldn't come up with anything besides labels. There was nothing deep and profound, because I realized I was too fearful of all that. And I kept pushing it away and pushing it away. And so this book is that story of what I call the 5 main fears, struggles, pains that I faced in my life, such as the loss of my father, which is still probably the most painful thing I think I've ever gone through. The facing of skin cancer, melanoma, and that battle and what that endured, fertility and the infertility, and the fears of becoming a mother when I felt that I probably had no business being anybody's mom, with all the fears and everything I already had. My own struggle with my relationship with my mother, as you and I, we share that. And then, in the end, really coming to this divine union of who's out there for me, right? Yeah. Is anybody out there for me? Because all my relationships haven't quite worked out. What's going on here?
I understand that.
Ooh. And so that book was that story of all of that. And it's science fiction, so there's battles in there with monsters, and it's time warps and parallel dimensions, and there's goddesses, and there's, deities, and there's all sorts of stuff to make it even more intriguing. And then you get to the end, right, which leads to my journey to India, which has been the most divine moment and transformational piece of my life. So I think that's probably more than you wanted to know, but that's probably, really the core and the gist of where that book came from. It's my life. And now I'm in book 2, right, which is I had I had 45 years to write book 1, and now I've got 3 months to write book 2. It's like, whoa, wait, I have to live again. So I've lived 3 months. And honestly, book 2 is just my life in the last 3 months so far. It's really interesting. Yeah, there's that much to write about in book 2. So
but there were some things that I wanted to, because I love the book. I had to reread several parts of it, you know. Like I said, it resonated with me so much.
Yeah, and I will put this out there as a disclaimer because I'm not too shy. This is my first novel, right? And again, I'm a researcher, a quantitative researcher. And so writing from this method, even though I'm a good writer, was so challenging. It was so hard. And after I read the book the first time, I was like, oh, I want to change that. I want to change that. I want to change that. So of course, I'm open to any critiques or feedback about the writing of the book. But, you know, I think overall it went pretty well.
Oh, it did. But there's some things because like I said, our lives kind of parallel.
Yeah.
Even though you went much farther than I did in academics, but our lives, it just blew my mind, you know, because we had such a close relationship with our dads.
Yeah.
But one of the things, and I just want to look at, okay, Christianity and Buddhism. Is it, you study Buddhism?
Well, in this book is a greater reference to Hinduism.
Hinduism.
Yes, but I did study Buddhism. I was actually a teacher of world civilizations and religion when I was a high school teacher. So, you know, I used to teach everything there. But there is a reference to Buddhism in the book, though. Did you catch it?
Yes, and I was like, okay, yeah. and you know, and I'm looking at Rumi and some of the, you know.
Yeah. But, you know, Rumi is my love. So, and now that I get a chance to be in a relationship with a real life Rumi, I'm like, this is the best, right? Yeah.
And so I'm looking at all these references to the world, because one thing that my dad did share with me, and he was not a religious man, he was more of an all-round spiritual man, and that's the way I believe we all should be.
Absolutely.
But and so when I was reading these things and looking at Christianity, because that's the type of household I grew up in.
Yeah.
When I'm looking at God as the typical God in the church, the dad in there had no history. You did talk about your mom's history, just like Mary had a history on earth, but God had no history on earth.
Yeah. Okay.
And then your dad dies on earth, but he has an everlasting heavenly and spiritual presence in your life.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so I was like, oh my God, this is so, oh my God, this is so awesome. Yeah. And then moving on, like in chapter 5, right? And the quote from Rumi is, at a distance, you only see my light, like God, like the light in the heavens. Any kind of God is referenced as light. Come closer and know that I am you. Yeah. And so one thing that reminded me of, I was at a conference back in 2005. It was April of 2005. That was almost 14 years ago. But anyway, and the worship was just amazing. And after the conference, one of the scariest things happened to me, and I was elevated up into the heavens. Mm-hmm. And so it was one of my, I think it was like the 3rd or 4th journey that I had taken spiritually. Yeah. And one of the voice that I heard afterwards was, you are, I am come. So it scared me because I was like, that's against the word of God. This is what I'm thinking. That's against the word of God. Yeah. Why would I say that I am come? Why would you say that to me?
To a Christian, yes.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I felt so empowered, so as if I could do anything.
Yeah.
But if you really read into the scriptures,
exactly,
that's really what Jesus, Yeshua HaMashiach, whoever,
exactly,
that's what his reason for coming was, to help us to understand we were like God, because that's what the word says in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love in chapter 5, like that That was chapter 4 was the hardest chapter to write. That was where I had, if you want to call it a meltdown, I had an emotional meltdown at that point. I was 75 pages into that book, and I was like, or 75% of the pages into the book, and I was like, I can't do anymore. And, you know, my co-writer in love, G, was like, you're going to give up now? You only have one more chapter to write. And I'm like, I can't do this. It was so heart-wrenching because in chapter 4, where I make that reference to God, was my own inability to see beyond the scars from cancer, the worries and the fears that I might die or be taken away from my children. I might die like my father's died.
Mm-hmm.
You know, will I ever be able to break through the relationship patterns? You know, can I break away from these things? And in chapter 4, there's that moment, right, with that protector in a way who, you know, really is more of a, you know, he's a reflection of Shiva. I just don't use the name out of respect for Lord Shiva in the book. But, you know, it is sort of a very, you know, modeled off of him. And he sort of says to Liv in that chapter, you know, look again, you know, tell me who you are in a way. And she says, I am God. God is me. And growing up a devout Catholic, of course, that's not something that's readily said or readily heard because, you know, in many religions, God is so separate.
Yes.
From us. But in Buddhism and in Hinduism, this is why I love Hinduism so much, it is not separate like that. It is a connection, and there's a greater expectation and understanding that we are all of God. And if we could all recognize, I am you, you are me, we are we in a way, like how much of the pain and suffering in the world would be gone because of that, right? It's through the differences, you know, that these things get created. So and that was a big part of, you know, my upbringing with my dad. My dad always connected me to the bigger picture of the world. He was such a lover of history and anything that he could study. You know, my dad was, you know, maybe had an 8th grade education, 9th grade education, you know, and he loved it. He used to help me study in school and things like that just to learn new things. And I learned so much through him too.
Yes, indeed. And like, as your dad, my dad, I think he had like a 5th grade education, but he became a cartographer for General Patton.
Wow.
You know, they wanted to commission him as an officer because he was so well read and he read all the time, but he was so well versed in everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you could talk about him we talked about engineering, even until the day he died. He talked about engineering and architecture. We just had these awesome conversations. And, you know, it was amazing. That's why I said your book resonated with me so much.
I'm so glad. Thank you.
Yes. And then in another part, you were, the man. He says, I have been taking care of our soul, and you have been taking care of our being. I love that. One time I was talking to a minister, and I said, the man gives us our soul.
Yeah.
And the woman, you know, gives us our spirit and the rest of us. And he couldn't understand. And I was like, oh my gosh, you don't understand. You don't get it.
Yeah. And those were the words of my co-writer in love, G. Yes. And he and I were talking. All of these conversations in this book are really conversations that he and I actually had in chapter 5 along the time in our relationship. And that one happened where he said, you know, you are like the branches above and the flower and the fruits of the tree. And I am like the roots and the foundation of the tree. And I have been waiting for you. This is what he said, you know, when we met. He said, I have been waiting for you. And I was like, oh my God, you know, like somebody who finally gets the whole thing of the life cycle and the significance of the divine feminine and the divine masculine and how they work in union. Yes. And I can't give away the deepest secret of this 3-series, book here, but I will tell you, it is going to lead you to understand who really is the man. Is he really a man? Is he something else? What is he? Right. And so the book 2 is really going to help that's obviously the cliffhanger in book 1, but it helps kind of open up some of that story as well. But you're going to be led the whole way until book 3 to really figure out who he is, if he's anything at all. So yeah, stay tuned.
So your journey to India, has really transformed your life
Yeah.
in so many ways. And so what's next after this next book? I mean, are you speaking? What are you doing besides writing?
Well, I'm midway through book two. I'm currently releasing some programs actually this week and next week.
Oh,
I have a really divine program that I'm putting out with G. Actually, we were just finishing up before this call today. It's called Rebirth, the Ultimate Unbecoming. And it is a really divine spiritual program. We're going to be working with people and helping them to uncover those aspects of their traumas and their pains and the things that have kept them pretty stuck in their life, in understanding there's a big difference between change and transformation, and
mhm.
giving them the tools and the strategies to become self-empowered to start to do that work on their own and recognize themselves as their own healer, their own guru, their own God, whatever they want to call themselves, to be able to do that work themselves. And we're going to be doing that. We're also putting out a twin flame relationship coaching mini program coming out as well for those who are really trying to get over relationship heartbreak, things like that they just haven't been able to do. So we're going to be doing that, which is going to keep us a little busy, finishing book two. And then I definitely am going to be getting out there and speaking. I've been invited to an event in Miami in January, the Fearless Summit. So I'll be speaking there on how to utilize your own fear and pain to find your true purpose and how to live into that and do something really good with it. And then whatever else is meant to be, we'll just let it be. We'll see.
Yes, this is wonderful. And I really look forward to that. I will definitely be in Miami. Oh my.
Yay! It sounds fantastic, doesn't it? I know, I'm really excited. So, and I'm hoping still to get a TED Talk. No, hint, hint, any TED people out there in the world. So give me a call.
This is going to be so
Yeah.
wonderful. I hope you'll come to an area closer to me as well, because, oh my gosh, I cannot imagine. Oh, the group was just so astounded when you
Oh,
spoke. Whew, it was very powerful. Very, very powerful.
absolutely. I loved every minute of it. Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness. Well, I thank you so much for being
Oh,
here
thank
today, Dr.
you.
Renee. Oh, you're an amazing woman. And I thank you for your energy. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for sharing your energy and your light. I love you so much. I
Oh, I
really.
love you too. Thank
And
you.
will you just share with us where people can find you, your information again, please?
Absolutely. So my main website is www.transcendentheart.com. And then also you can find me on Instagram, is where I have my big following and where I do most of my work. And it's at Dr. Renee 1, the number 1. So at Dr. Renee 1 Life.
Okay, great. Well,
Thank
until the next time, we thank you for joining us on Unleash Your Beauty, Discover Your Power Within. And I hope you've gotten some great information here. And we'll see you the next time on Roku, Amazon Fire Stick, and Apple TV. Until the next time, ciao for now. If you want to learn how to create a healthier, wealthier, more vibrant lifestyle, tune in to Unleash Your Beauty, Discover Your Power Within.